live. Ooh, it is hot out today too. I don't know where y'all live at, but it's hot. Mm. I got my overalls on. Welcome everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. We're gonna get into tonight's show. We have a very enlightened show today, and I think that this show here is particularly long overdue. And we're gonna jump straight into it. I hope everyone's doing well. I did do part one about Appalachian and so forth. It's in the group. Well, it's pardon me, it's on the Facebook page. I'll post in the group. It's gonna be on YouTube. Make sure y'all join the Hoodoo Lounge TV on YouTube. And by the way, everyone, welcome to Hoodoo Lounge Inc. Once again, that's Hoodoo Lounge Inc., the real Hoodoo Lounge. And for those of y'all that's tuning in, make sure you also join the Hoodoo Lounge group. Facebook. There we go. All right. And we're live on Haps app, which is a good app. We're over here where we stream to multiple platforms. I'm also now on Twitch. For those of y'all that's on Twitch, you can also follow me on there. We are streaming live also on Periscope and Twitter. Yes, that's right, and Facebook Live. So once again, welcome to Hoodoo Lounge. You know this is a metaphysical tempo show, but still it is under Hoodoo Lounge. And I just want to make sure everyone see the show. So anyhow, I want to talk to everyone tonight about diversity in hoodoo. And you probably say, why are you wearing this? Well, if you watch my other show, I talked about root work and hoodoo spirituality in the Appalachian. And this here is part two of the show. So oftentimes people tend to think hoodoo is just strictly Black American. It is. The basis of it is Black American. No dispute about that. Hands down. It was created on the plantations by Black American slaves that had to deal with slavery and a slave master because that was going on with us. We created it based off of the conditions here in America. Hoodoo is not nothing that's overseas in Africa or in the Caribbean. This is our folklore magic, and what makes it so unique is the cultural elements that are tied into it. And I think it's important that we recognize the diversity in hoodoo. Why? Because it opens you up to other elements of other cultures and gives you more strength. That's why I like hoodoo. Hoodoo has no boundaries. There's no dogmatic ways to it. And I want to make something clear. Root work and hoodoo look different compared to where you're located at. In the Carolinas here, in Georgia, it's about the same because we're on the coastal area. If you look at it in Louisiana and New Orleans, you're going to see more voodoo mixed in, and you're going to see more conjuring, the word conjuring used more because you're dealing with a voodoo element. And the reason why I say that is because Louisiana had an influx of slaves that came in from Haiti, not slaves, but the mulattoes. Let me rephrase that: mulattoes that fled the island because of the Haitian Revolution, and they were killing mulattoes and the French off. So with them, they brought a lot of these customs to Louisiana. So that's why when you look at root work and conjuring, you will see more of a voodoo mixture in with it in Louisiana. And let's get it straight, because like I said, People get excited when they start learning about hoodoo. That came from the mulattoes, that half French and half African, brought it over here, which is usually a higher class of Haitians that came over, and mixed in with some Cajun elements too. Not get it twisted. So I'm talking to you guys tonight about Native American spirituality and Appalachian cultures mixed in with it, or European culture. But we're gonna also talk about Appalachian. Why? Because Appalachian there's a lot of elements when you start looking at Appalachian root work and our root work, or I don't want to say black root work, but just it's a mixture. It's a hodgepodge, and that's the truth what it is. So let's start breaking down. Like I said, it looks different based off the environment that you're in. If you live in the Carolinas, on the Sea Islands, or the coast, of course your root work going to look different because you have a different geographic location. The land is different. You use probably more water in your spell work. You use certain herbs that grow by the water that you can't get in the mountains. Now, if you're in the mountains, you're going to use some herbs, some trees, and leaves and stuff that grows up there. There's nothing wrong with that. Because like in Appalachian root work, it looks different from individual, family to family, and sometimes ethnic group. Because those in the Appalachians, they usually came from Germany, old Germany, and Ireland and Scotland. And what's unique about it is these cultures had their own folklore belief systems. Yeah, and I'm not even talking about like Viking pagan. I'm not talking about that. No, they have their own magic and folklore too. Magic is just not exclusive towards Black Americans. It's not. The Irish came over here in the Scottish with their own ways about how to use the land. Now I'm going to tell you something if you look at it on a deeper level. Because at the end of the day, we're all traveling. We all coming in from somewhere. And remember, I told you, if you live in America, the American group of people have not been around for 800 years. American group of people, we haven't been around for 800 years. Hell, we haven't been around for 500 years. We are a mixed group of people. You trace in everybody's bloodline, you're gonna find something different, whether you want it there or not. You're gonna find Indian, you're gonna find maybe some Irish, some Scottish, some French. We're all mixed up. Now, what we all have in common in the spiritual world is everybody seems to have a deep tie relation to Mother Nature. They tend to worship and have a great deal of respect for Mother Nature. And that makes sense because you have to have some ties to Mother Nature to do spell work, because how you gonna heal yourself if you don't know about the different leaves outside? How you gonna heal a wound if you don't know about what herbs will strengthen you or make your muscles feel more relaxed when they're spazzing up? See, this is not all about, a lot of y'all tend to think when we talk about root work about hurting other people, putting a love spell on them. Man, that's stereotypical 101 shit right there. We're talking about healing, coming into your divine power, your spiritual gifts, living a better life. I lived in Johnson City, Tennessee for a little bit, right? And the elderly white people that lived in the mountains, they really believed that their magic was there to help them to become better people. Now, it wasn't about religion or God. They didn't say you had to have a God. It's about you fixing yourself. Because at the end of the day, no matter what your faith is, you're still part of this global universe. You're still part of the global universe. And if your spirituality is knocked out of whack, then that's going to affect your day-to-day life and those around you. But let's go ahead and talk about the elements. Now we start talking about Native American spirituality. Let's start with Native American spirituality. Let's start with that. You have a lot of elements of Native American spirituality that's mixed in with Black American. How did it get there? Because the slaves ran off the plantation, they ran out into the woods, and they found Indian tribes out there. In the Carolina, could have been an Ediso tribe, the Yamasee tribe, whatever, Cherokee. If you along the Savannah River, it could be the Uchi tribe. Who knows? But the blacks lived amongst them, and for the time being, it was in the woods with them. And the Native Americans would teach them like, "Hey, look, use this herb." Now, keep in mind, he might have been out. He might be second generation, third generation from Africa, so he don't know too much. But the native is showing, say, this herb will work with this, and they said, "Oh." Well, we have a lady out on the plantation. She said, if I do this, and the chief go, really? And they start exchanging herbs. Like, well, if I mix this together, this could also heal this. And before you know it, you start to get spells going on. You start to get cures going on for illnesses. That's how information was exchanged. When the slave ran out there in the plantation, he ran off the plantation, he was hiding out for maybe a few months. He had to take herbs from the natives to keep his body maybe warm. He had to get over a cold. Maybe he got bit by an animal or something. Or maybe the Native American got sick and the slave's like, hey, I know a remedy that could help you. And that's how they started exchanging. Now you say, well, where the European aspect comes in? Well, there's a lot of European aspects in it. A lot of the pagan belief system. If you watch Harriet Tubman, when she was looking up at the moon, yeah, that was some of her cultural stuff too. But just knowing ways of America land, how to navigate America land. We all exchange teas, herbs that was used, exchanging stuff. The Celtics came over here, and I'm going to say, I'm putting a name and a nationality or a name to the groups of people because I don't like saying European witchcraft because that gives hoodoo on a whole a negative spin. And Europeans were not practicing witchcraft, so to speak. It was their folklore and ways and their customs. The Irish came over here with their ways of belief system on how to get rid of negative people. Yeah. Like one of them was you write the person's name down, put it in a big sack with some herbs, some strong herbs, cut a hole inside the tree, right? Cut a hole inside the tree with the person's name in it, drop the sack inside the tree and let it sit for 9 days. That will get rid of your enemy. In the Appalachians, they call that doctoring. That's their term, doctoring. Yeah, boy, I had them doctored up when they came on by. And y'all forget there were black people that lived in the Appalachians. I'm going to break something down to you. How many of you saw the movie The Spell? Huh? Somebody put it in the chat box if you watch it. The movie The Spell. Huh? Go ahead and rent that on Roku for $2. Stop being cheap. Just give me one quick second. Yeah, so if you watch the movie The Spell, which was a very unique movie about the black man that was traveling. I forgot the actor name, it just slipped my mind. But anyway, he traveled with the family kid, the airplane crashed on the mountain. He's going to his father's funeral, and he gets stuck in this black woman house, her husband house, and they're like some of the biggest conjurers, root doctors you could ever meet, man. Woo, they put it on this man. Now, there's a scene where she took his semen. And I remember turning to my girlfriend going, how did she get his semen? Because he was injured, laying in bed. She's like, how you think she got it? She didn't ride him. She jacked him off and got it. But that was a lot of damn semen. So that means she was like lighting him up. But she was using his body fluids against him. Now, they lived in the mountains. Now, deep in the mountains, too. Like, you had to take an airplane damn near to get there and stuff. But that's Appalachian magic. Using the bones. Appalachian magic. They call the Bible in the mountains the cure book. Oh yeah, daddy pull out that cure book, find a good scripture in there and get the curing folks. Now curing could mean actually curing somebody of an illness, or curing could mean putting something on someone. So I'm teaching you some terms. So if you ever travel out of the Carolinas, Georgia, or New York or whatever, and you in the Appalachians somewhere, you hear somebody say, man, they about to cure you or doctor you up. You might want to be careful, especially if you acting like a butthole. You might want to be careful. Just telling you. So back to Native American spirituality. Another aspect of Native American spirituality that's mixed in with root work and hoodoo is animals. What do you mean by animals? Native American had a deep respect and reverence for animals. And when they have visions, they will see animals in a dream. Just like when it starts thundering outside, they believe there's a giant eagle in the sky, a thunder eagle. And he's huge. And when the thunder flashes, you can see his face and his wings in the sky. Native Americans had a strong sense of awareness about animals too. And this played a role in root work. Have you ever had that granddaddy or somebody that say, hey, watch where you stepping. There's a hornet nest over there. Granddad, how you know there's a hornet nest? Especially if they got mixed Native American blood in them, like my grandfather and my family. You know, we have Lenape and we have Lumbee Indian in us. Matter of fact, this is the book on our people back home in Rockland County, New York. Ramapo Mountain people. Shout out to my cousin Hamadi Martin and shout out to Chief Perry. I live 10 minutes from here, and these are some of my family. And shout out to the Grote family too, which is my family, which is in this book. There's also a show you can watch too called The Red Road with Lisa Bonet in it. Check that out. Check it out. Back anyway, Native Americans had a great sense of understanding animals, and animals meant something to you in your dreams. For example, I was always raised by my mother and them that in your dream, if you see a snake, that means it's your enemy. My grandma always told me if the snake opens its mouth and you see your enemy face inside its mouth, you got a bad enemy. In your dream, if the snake is chasing you and if he strikes you, you got some bad stuff coming your way. But if you kill the snake in your dream, that means they can't harm you in real life. Now, I never got bit in my dream by a snake, but I have been chased by it. And when I wake up, usually 3 days later, my enemy will appear. They'll do something shady on the job. Somebody on the street try to do something shady to me. Your enemy will most likely appear. Now, this is a part of Native American spirituality because we talk about animals here on American soil. Before those of you who want to go the Africa route, we're talking about animals that are here on our soil. The rabbits, what they mean. Water, what does it mean? If you see rushing water, that means your finances is about to be unstable. You might be going through some rough time. If the water's calm, that means your finances are stable. If the water is dark and murky, well, some bad omens coming your way. So even water plays a role. But there's plenty of aspects of Native American spirituality. Hell, let's talk about the plants. Sage, found it here on our soil. Sage. Native Americans had a lot of knowledge when it came down to herbs and plants. And a lot of our black slaves here in America learned that from the Native American spirituality. Think about this. Down in the low country, this is an old low country root work for curing. For curing. If you have a bad cut, they used to take spider web, compacted in the cut. You put that spider web in the cut, something about that spider web will absorb the blood and help stop the blood and heal the cut. That's a fact. That's a Geechee remedy. That's a Geechee remedy. But it came from down here from amongst Native American tribes. Worshipping the animals like the bears, understanding the seasons. You know, just being in tune with the animal. And I tell everyone in the Hoodoo line group, that's your choice. But, you know, I've been exposed to various elements of Hoodoo and Native American spirituality and so forth. And I said, everybody should have an animal name. In my family, in my immediate family. And that's why I love my family. I love my granddaddy, my grandmamas. I love them. My grandma will be 100 years old. And I learned so much from it. I'm blessed to learn so much about the family history, name, and culture. I challenge everyone to learn about your family, your immediate bloodline. Everybody had a name that was tied to an animal. My nickname was Bonchi, and then they used to call me Bear. Well, I have a bear tattoo, and I have my Ramapo Lenape tribal band around my wrist. But mine called Bear. Then we had my cousin called Rabbit, aka Pump. Pump. My granddad nickname was Possum Tail. Now he was half Indian. Possum Tail. The mother's a Lumbee. And Manette, shout out to the Nance family up there in North Carolina. So we had names for each other that tied to the land. My granddad showed me when you go hunting and you kill a deer and you put it up in the tree, you just don't throw the deer all around and disrespect it, even though it's dead. Because you got to show it some honor and some respect because the deer is about to be sacrificed to feed your family. So we would cut the deer body a certain way. to show respect. That's Native American spirituality right here on our soil, our lineage, our blood, our history. He'll reach in, take that blood, and rub it across our face. But he always say, that's the warrior. Now you done bond it with that deer. You done show honor and thanks to it. See, a lot of people just go out there, coaches today, bam, shoot the deer, throw it on the truck, and bleeding, guts hanging out. Oh, that's disrespect. My mama always told me and my granddad, you never let an animal suffer. My dad raised me the same way. You never let an animal suffer. If a horse fell down and the leg was broken and couldn't go no more, you got to go get the gun and shoot it. Put it out of its misery. Probably, how you pay attention? Look, man, people didn't have that back in the day to take a horse to get it leg healed. But if that horse leg is really messed up that bad, that horse is suffering. And you're wrong for letting it suffer. Or any animal. This is Native American aspect. I remember my granddad used to stump his toe a certain way, and he'll holler like an animal. He'll make animal noises. And that to show reverence and also to build a better spine with you and the animals. So the elements to Native American herbs, sage, burning the sage. Burn the sage. I'm going to tell you something. If you know how to burn sage properly in your home, Native American believe evil spirits live in a corner of homes. That's why they teepees and everything was round. And they longer houses would have round edges on it, not corners. They didn't like corners. They believed that negative spirits lived in the corners. Now, if you live in an apartment or a house anywhere and you burn the sage, you're supposed to fan that sage in the corner. That's where the evil spirit stays at, in the corner. Supposed to fan in the corner, bless the corner. And we're gonna go along. This is just part two. Just part two. I mean, it was there's part two, so it'll be part three of the show. But get back to Appalachian. What was dope about Appalachian is the paganism aspect where they used the Bible to cover up some of their pagan beliefs. But when you look deeper into it, you will see the pagan belief behind the Bible. Same thing like voodoo and Catholicism. Behind Catholicism is the voodoo saints. Same thing. There's plenty of aspects, the crossroad. Appalachian culture has the crossroad. You hear about the crossroad all the time. And the crossroad, that's where we meet ourselves. That's where we meet the higher form of spirituality. I'm going to tell you something, going back to Christianity, they also, now Appalachians strongly believe in Jesus. And they also believe that Jesus was at the crossroad. Why? Because when you see Jesus on the cross, he's stretched out. You have above or below, so it's below is above, and stretched out. When he's on the cross, that's the greatest crossroad of ever. Jesus on the cross. But that's where you come to meet who you are. And they believe in the veil. They believe in the veil. They believe that some people are born with that sight, that gift. And not everybody on the internet, I got a veil, you ain't got nothing. Because you have the veil, it shows in the way you act. I got a child with the veil, and they act like they 45 years old, and they've been acting like that since the moment they were born. They could see into things. I remember my daughter was 2 years old. She's like, Daddy, the demon in the closet poking fun at us. They laughing. And then she always had this deep analytical skill mindset. At 4 years old, she could read people's emotions and they feel it. She could walk in a room and see how people feel and say it openly. And the words she used was never like a child. If I put my 9-year-old daughter on the phone today and let her talk, you think that's a 45-year-old talking. Now, it's a bless, but it's a curse because sometimes that gets on my nerves. It does. I'm going to keep it real. It gets on my nerves sometimes. Because she's so advanced, you forget you talking to a 9-year-old. And sometimes I have to check her because she forgets she's 9. But that's being born with the veil. She has a spiritual gift about herself that she can see things that adults cannot even see. But when you have a child that's like that, you have to make sure you raise them properly so they can use that blessing from God wisely. Because a lot of children out here don't have that. That's just a fact. They just go through day to day as their normal child self, and that's it. But to have somebody walk in a room and have a strong spirit of discernment about them and the words they use and the phrases they use, and they're a child, and you're like, wait a minute, because I'm not teaching her that stuff. That this person talks, she talks like that on her own. My ex-wife did not teach her like that. They damn sure didn't teach her that because she's more articulate than half of my ex-wife family. Anyway, but so with a lot of the pagan elements come from Celtic culture. So when you start seeing a lot of Celtic elements in hoodoo, and it's in there, the folklore and stuff, a lot of Celtic elements is in there. And people say, well, break it down more. Well, look, we don't use the herbs with Native American spirituality. We don't use the reverend for trees and stuff and nature and everything from Native American spirituality and also with Celtic and Old German. But like I said, everybody had a deep respect for the land and the property that they was on, and just the land in general, Mother Nature. Even in our Black African culture, we still have a lot of respect for land and culture. And let me tell you something: when you live in that concrete jungle, like say you live somewhere like New York City, I didn't live in New York City. I lived going slightly upstate. I was right by Connecticut, at the foothills of the mountains in New York, and that's where I was like 15 minutes from Mawa and 10 minutes from Hillsborough. So we even have our own folklores and beliefs in the Ramapo Mountain people folk. So everybody has their own folklore and customs. And I say that because we need to show respect and love to one another because it's just not hoodoo. Even though you see the Black experience part of it where we use to protect ourselves from slave masters and so forth. But we also use to heal ourselves. I want y'all to understand that. A lot of root work was to heal people. People dealing with diabetes, a broke leg, was to heal people. Now you could be a magician, but are you a healer? Can you heal people? Can you say, here, take this, it'll lower your blood pressure. Here, take this, it'll cure your upset stomach. Take this, it's good for a snake bite or a wasp sting. Are you a healer or are you a magician? But you must understand the origins and all the cultural elements that's tied into this because we cross paths. And like I said, I've lived down here in South Clyde. You know how many Black people I meet with the name Mackenzie, Murray? And let me tell you something. Oh, they took that place. No, they didn't take it from their slave master because I know these families personally, and they damn their grandfather or their great grandfather is half white or white. So they didn't take it. And it wasn't on no slave plantation either. They actually were married into the family. It's just like on my mom's side, her grandfather, his parents, both of them, one the dad was half white and half Black, and the mom was straight up French. They were both French, probably refugees, like I said, probably from up in Haiti. I did my research, and that's how a lot of the French people came into Georgia, in Statesboro, Georgia. They was running from the islands as mulattoes and white people because they was slaughtering them. The Haitians was slaughtering them. They were trying to fight for their freedom. See, you gotta know your history. Now, go back further back. Their bloodline and their ancestry further back. They're from Normandy, France. Because if they're French, they're from somewhere else, right? Where at in France? Well, I start looking up the last name and see where the surname actually traces itself back to Normandy, France. My dad's side, the Hiltons. That's British. You can find the Hilton last name, a common name in Jamaica. But the Hiltons in the Low Country of Charleston, Beaufort, Hanahan Island, those people origins came from the Hiltons came from slave masters from out of what you call it, out of Barbados. That's how you got Hilton Head Island. He came over here and started the island. A lot of your white slave masters here in the Low Country was actually the sons of British kings or whatever, or princes. Now, if they're Irish or Scotland, that's a different culture, a different heritage amongst the white people. And the Irish and Scots were treated poorly, and they came from poor land, so they didn't have the same wealth and privilege as the British, the English, and the French, and the Spanish. But you got to learn your history and culture. I have a Spanish middle name, Dedrick Antonio Hilton. Ask my mom where that came from. That's her cult. That's her pulling back from her cultural aspect off the islands and stuff of that name. Even though the Spaniards had Georgia and Spain for and Florida for a long time. Because remember, if you was a slave and you ran out of South Carolina and Georgia and you made your way to Florida, that was by the Spanish. Florida was run by the Spanish. You was free. You was free. It's a common cultural thing in the state of Georgia to meet black men with Spanish names. Why is that? You got to do your history. You got to do your research. Start learning about who owned these land, who was there, what was slavery like, what were the black people like. Yeah, so in Statesboro, Georgia, we're only an hour away from like Jacksonville. You have a lot of people with the name Rico, that's black, Carlos, that's black. I mean, I done seen a couple of them, man. And these are black people. No, they ain't from the Bronx. These are straight up Southern black people with Spanish names, or Antonio, like mine. You got to learn about your culture. And when you learn about your origins, you start to see we all travelers. No one should hate on anyone because we all take from each other culture bits and pieces. If we're living amongst each other, you better believe there was probably a time that, think about this, you might have had an escaped African or a slave escape the plantation, runs in the woods, hanging out with an Indian that's probably on the run or just happen to be living in the woods. And then you got an Irishman that's wanted by the law or just happen to be living in the woods himself too. And they all start talking about, yeah, I know this old remedy to help heal you too back in my country. Well, yeah, well, what it was. No, get that tree over there, get that plant over there. And the Indian said, well, go ahead and get some of that dirt or get this animal over here. And Africa and the slave said, well, look, I know if I use this here or pray this way, combine all that together, you got hoodoo. You got yourself root work. You got yourself some root work going on. I tell you, those that could tap into their bloodline and you understand where you done came from and where your people done came from and what you got in you genetically, that's even better. Because now it's going to teach you, well, why do I pull this way spirituality? Why do I go that way spirituality? Just don't be fooled by the melanin in your skin. You're more than that. People aren't crayons. I'm going to say it again. People aren't crayons. They're nationalities. They come with a culture, a heritage, a lineage. Learn it. And you'll see how all of it comes together in this nice spiritual world. On that note, spiritual family, y'all join the Hoodoo Lounge Group Inc. on Facebook. Share this with your friends and family. Y'all stay blessed, stay strong. I'll catch y'all another time.